In this lesson, I'm going to add a couple of ridges to the top of the helmet, and we're going to use a couple of different techniques. In the first technique, we're going to use a projected sketch, and in the second technique, I'll use a 3D spline sketched directly onto the surface of the helmet. So let's get started with the projected sketch first. I'm going to open up a sketch on the top plane. I'll just click on the top plane and click on the sketch icon. And now I'll open a sketch on that plane and just sketch an arc that kind of follows the shape of the arrow that we've added while you were away. Now I'll exit out of the sketch, and with that sketch still selected, go to Project Curve, and I want to project that sketch onto a face. So I'm going to make sure to select the first option. In the selection box, I'll pick on the main face of the helmet, and I can see that I've got a yellow preview, and that's pretty much what I want the ridge to look like. We'll click OK, and now I've got a projected curve feature. And let's go back and turn on our tree display show flat tree view again, just so we don't have all of these parent-child relationships showing up in the feature manager. So the sketch and then the curve. Now I want to sweep a circle along this curve. So I'm going to create a plane. And I want this plane to be perpendicular to the curve. As a second reference, I'm going to select the endpoint of the curve. Then right-click to accept and draw a circle. I've placed the circle approximately where I need it, and I'm going to have to place it with more accuracy later. I'm also going to make it much smaller, so I'll make it 0.075. Then I'll zoom in, grab the center of the circle, control select the curve itself, and create a pierce constraint. Now I'll exit the sketch and create a sweep such that the circle is swept along the projected curve. Now this creates a nice ridge, but it also creates something on the inside of the helmet that's not necessarily wanted. So we need to get rid of all of that. And to do that, we're going to have to cap off the ends of this sweep with planar surfaces and then blend it all in. So let's take a look at how to do that. The first thing I'm going to do is use the planar surface tool to cap off the ends. And you can cap multiple planar surfaces in a single feature. So I'll select the open edges on both ends of the sweep and then right-click to accept. The next thing I want to do is to trim all of this so that it's only on one side of the surface. So let's use the trim, and I want to do a mutual trim with the main surface, the planar surface, the swept surface, and the other planar surface. And then in the selections to keep box, I'll select the main surface, this half of the planar, this half of the sweep, and this half of the other planar surface, and then right-click to accept. So let's look inside the helmet and just verify that this has done what we wanted. We can still see that ridge, but it's now an indentation rather than something sticking out. So the next step is going to be put some fillets on here. The diameter of this was 0.75, so we're going to need to have a radius of about 0.03. And let's apply that actually to both ends. Okay. And now to work this in, I'll use another fillet, select this edge, and make it much larger, say 0.1. So now we have a ridge on the helmet that's slightly different from what we've created before. Now the second one I'm going to create will be not using the projected curve, but just using a 3D spline. So I'll start a 3D sketch and then click the drop down next to the spline and click Spline on Surface. This allows me to sketch directly on the 3D surface. And depending on your computer, this can be a little tedious or slow, but it allows you to get what you want more directly. The projected curve gave me a shape that I didn't really intend in this area. I think I could have gotten the better shape if I'd been able to sketch directly onto the surface. And so I'm giving this second feature type a chance. Now I'll exit the sketch, create another plane as I did before, perpendicular to the curve at the endpoint, perpendicular, draw a circle. See if I like this one a little larger. Let's make it 0.1 instead of 0.075. Exit the sketch, sweep a surface, select the profile, select the path, right-click to accept, planar surface, select both ends, trim, mutual, select the main surface, the swept surface, the two planar surfaces. Make sure you're set to keep selections, select the main, select the sweep, select the two planar, and say OK. Now I'm going to do this a little bit differently here. We'll put a fillet on both of these ends. This one can be 0.045. Okay, and now we're going to try to use a variable radius fillet to give this a little bit of different effect from what we've done before. I'm going to select the two long edges over here, make a 0.25, 0.25. Make sure that all of the ends are at 0.25. And then in the middle, make it a 1 inch. To get the middle point on the other side, we'll select that. We can assign 1 inch there, maybe even 1.5 inches, just to give it a little more bulge. So this allows our ridge to look a little bit different, a little more blended in toward the middle and a little less blended towards the end. I just want to show you that there are a lot of different options when you're trying to achieve a look with surfacing.